Phew! Now I'm done. The footage for the theme, Sam and the Universe, is uploaded. And now, the introduction. I am unknown. My credo is anonymity, and you won't find me online. But today, I will reveal something to you. This story came to me in a dream within a dream, a miracle. When I woke up, I only had a pen and paper by my side. I woke up, and this creation woke up with me. Let us listen to it now. It's not quite like Stephen King, but something similar. Something that will captivate you. Ukrainian Kharkiv welcomes you. Congratulations. Sam and the Universe, the first fantasy book in English, will go on a date with you. Dear viewers, peace to all. Good. On the 5th channel, the operator was still coughing, briefly, sharply, like an old engine starting up in winter. Then, for several weeks, he spoke only about temperature and strange dreams. It seemed the illness was erasing not only his body, but also his syntax. I repeat, no changes. Continue monitoring the sectors. Record into the memory container. His last signal consisted of 3 words: temperature, silence, light. After that, nothing. Only clean noise, which Sam could no longer distinguish from the very breathing of the atmosphere. He was a young scientist, an intern who had a rare opportunity. 6 months of scientific solitude at a communication station located in a remote area. 5 hectares of land sown with grasses, and 12 majestic satellite dishes silently staring into the sky formed his new world. The morning of the first day was nameless, slightly damp. The air at 6,000 feet smelled of metal dust and boredom. Sam realized too late that the silence here had a structure, similar to snow that never melts, only layering itself in his head. The tower was surrounded by the mirrors of the radio dishes, like insects frozen in prayer. Sam himself seemed part of this mechanical landscape, lean with long fingers that always moved imperceptibly, as if trying to feel what could not be heard. His eyes, light and slightly trembling, seemed to constantly search for the rhythm of the cosmos. Dressed in practical gray overalls that were almost indistinguishable from the station's metal surfaces, he looked as if distance from the human world had long become his secondary body. His thoughts were woven between numbers and signals, but deep down, a quiet, childlike curiosity remained, a desire to feel something else alive among the cold mirrors and silent antennas. Here, amidst the isolated silence, he learned to listen to the invisible, the rhythms of the stars, the echoes of his own doubts, and even the presence of a future that only he seemed able to perceive. Day after day, the world below still transmitted signals. Short, fragmented, full of coughing and orders. Sam listened to them like someone listening to the heartbeat of a friend who is already dead. Then, even that quieted. Yet, every week he turned on the transmitter. Not because he believed in an answer, but because a person who has someone to be silent with is not completely alone. The first days of silence, he simply observed. How the sun slid across the mirrored surfaces of the antennas, how the wind played in the tall grass, how the shadows of the dishes danced on the ground. All this seemed ordinary, but over time, he began to notice unusual patterns, faint signals emerging where nothing should have been, subtle changes in the atmospheric noise, strange fluctuations that no textbook could explain. He talked to the instruments, the dishes, computers, receivers. Everything became part of his world, as if alive. Sometimes he felt they were answering, but not with words, but with quiet vibrations trembling in the air. Every signal that came from the heavens unfolded new horizons before him. Was it merely cosmic noise, or the voices of something that exists beyond human comprehension? At night, he would go out to the open platform between the antennas, look at the stars, and feel his consciousness expand. In this infinitude, he began to sense the presence of an alien intelligence, not hostile, but profoundly foreign, yet simultaneously similar. Each dish became a window into infinity, and each signal a thread pulling him deeper into space, into an invisible world where the laws of time and space lost their power. He understood that these 6 months would change him forever. The station and the dishes were not just instruments. They became conduits, revealing not only the universe, but also the limits of his own understanding. In some way, in those signal fluctuations, he felt the beginning of a great discovery, something that had never been laid out in the pages of textbooks, but which can forever change the understanding of life, consciousness, and the space around it. On the second month, he heard a buzzing from under the tower and thought it was a car. In fact, it was a delivery droid, small as a child's toy, 1/2 meter of metal across, crippled and weary. It spun its sensor, blinked its diodes, and squeaked at a monotone. Maintenance required. Workshop. Workshop. Sam watched for a long time as it tried to come closer, wheels slipping on the gravel, like a dog begging to a master who was no more. Inside the container, sealed in cellophane, sterile as an artifact, lay a letter from his father. The paper was sodden, scorched, and smelled of antiseptic and smoke. By a cruel irony of fate, only a few words survived. If you can, son, and listen, you have to. Sam stayed up until nightfall fixing the metal creature, not because he hoped to mend it, but because in the darkness, at least someone else was squeaking back. When he finally brought the droid back to life, it stood motionless for a few seconds, as if recalling why it existed at all. Then its sensor eyes lit up, and instead of the expected system test, a jumble of signals poured from the speaker. Human voices, reports, children's laughter, news snippets, strain identified, mortality rate, restrict movement. All of it repeated, overlapping, blending into a solid storm. Sam caught isolated words, like wreckage among the waves. However, by morning, the signals faded, leaving only a low hum that resembled the breathing of an exhausted planet. It was then that Sam wrote his first letter, perhaps for his father, perhaps for someone in the family, or perhaps he addressed this audio letter to himself, if only to make the next night pass more calmly. It seems to me that a person left alone with the equipment begins to hear not the universe, but his own mind, which is gradually acquiring the frequency of the cosmos. The days here drag on without a change in tonality, like an endless signal without meaning, and I'm no longer sure if the tower is picking up the world's noise or just my attempts to interpret it. Yesterday, the droid I fixed began transmitting fragments again, snippets of voices melting into static, like thoughts in a dream. And every word that emerges from this chaos I catch with the same anxiety with which a child catches an insect, not out of curiosity, but out of a need to prove to myself that life is still stirring. I am learning to be calm, but calm here reminds me of death, only without the tragedy. Sometimes it seems to me that our machines have learned to transmit what we cannot utter. Despair that sounds like pure white noise. If anyone besides me reads this letter, no, I am listening on. Perhaps listening is the last formal love of which a person is capable. I'm still in the radio room every evening, under a pile of plastic earpieces and antennas, and I listen, even sometimes as if expecting an answer that will never come. The operators disappeared one by one. First a cough, then weak laughter over the air, then only static, and finally, a silence that weighs more than any news now. I ask myself every morning, if I raise the transmitter power to maximum, will someone out there, beyond the mountains or ruins, finally respond with a human word? But for now, I just correct the frequency lists, change the filters, and rewrite the last lines of the log as a prayer that might someday become a weak proof. A new day slowly unfolds, like a laboratory experiment of a heavenly consciousness. And yet I continue to listen to the cosmos, which is silent with the same indifference with which the earth is now silent. A strange irony. I came here to listen to the voices of the stars. And now I'm trying to catch at least the tremor of a human breath. but both frequencies are the same: weak, fragile, full of hiss, as if the world is simply exhaling through its teeth. The fans hum, as if the station's old lung is trying to exhale all the stagnant dust. Outside the window, white air, too dry to breathe, and I sometimes think that silence also has a smell. When I turn on the transmitter, it seems to me that I am listening to two boundless silences at once: the cold silence of the cosmos and the hot, suffocated silence of the earth. Between them, I am a useless translator who has long forgotten for whom he is translating at all. Sometimes I catch a quiet hiss and convince myself it's a signal, and not just dust in the line. Although, perhaps, that's exactly what it is: the true voice of the planet, groaning not with pain, but with indifference. My profession is now not to listen to the cosmos, but to register the gradual fading of the world. And I do it with the meticulousness of a good civil servant who believes in the importance of protocol even after the apocalypse. If anyone ever finds these records, let them know the earth also sounds. You just have to be able to listen to its silence. Today's day is a miracle so bright that I'm compelled to write it down, so that in 30 years I can recall even the smell of metal and gasoline swirling in the air, and the wonderful golden sheen on the shoulder boards of the lady who stepped onto the helicopter platform with such confidence that even the droid, my humble moto friend, raised its sensors, as if acknowledging the grandeur of the moment. I don't know if the world out there is still groaning with silence, but here, amidst the whirring rotors, the thud of engines, and the whisper of the wind over the cabin glass, I realized sometimes life allows you to feel a joy that is pure and straightforward, without any dust of loneliness or metallic smell of fear. And this is enough to convince myself that patience and observation are not in vain. She, a sincere lady, smiled as she extended her hand to me and the droid, and even I, who sought voices and hisses everywhere, felt that humanity is still capable of order and beauty, no matter how silent and cold the planets may be. Her smile was like a signal that the planet, perhaps, sometimes laughs. Even if only for one boy in the radio room. I am already in my uniform. I am about to go up into the helicopter. My droid is beside me, and everything seems incredible. But I know, in 30 years, I will turn on this letter and remember how the noise of the engines, the smell of gasoline and perfume, and the gleam of the shoulder boards made the world completely alive for a moment, and that happiness will remain forever. The dense fog of 3 months of silence was broken by the loud engine of the helicopter and the noise of Sam's joyful cries. This audio letter became his last testimony in a strange, almost unreal historical time for Sam and for the entire planet, because the arrivals were not humans, but replicants.